morning, everyone. I'm Matt Graves, United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. I'm joined on the stage today by ATF Special Agent in Charge Craig Calamine, DEA Special Agent in Charge Jared Forget, FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge Matthew Saul, and Metropolitan Police Department Executive Chief Jeffrey Carroll. Shortly after I was sworn into office, our law enforcement partners asked whether I'd be open to creating a process where respective offices would review on a daily basis all gun arrests in the District of Columbia to determine whether the arrest should be charged federally in United States District Court or locally in DC Superior Court. I was, of course, immediately interested in the idea, and the institutions represented on the stage today began discussing a process to implement this idea and the criteria we'd use to make determinations about what would be prosecuted where. We call this effort Project Safe Neighborhood, a nod to broader efforts within the Department of Justice to taking a comprehensive approach to community safety. In the weeks and months after this initial conversation, we developed both a process and a criteria. With respect to criteria, it was critical to all of our organizations to take a data-informed approach. Specifically, we wanted data on two fronts: data about the person arrested and data about the firearm they possessed. For the person arrested, we wanted to know, do they have the hallmarks of many of the people we see who ultimately become involved in shootings? Or do we have reason to believe the person is currently driving violence in our community? In doing this review, the circumstances we consider include whether the person arrested has multiple felony arrests, and specifically felony arrests for violence, illegal firearms, and narcotics trafficking. The recency and frequency of these arrests. Whether the person has a gang or crew affiliation. The circumstances of the arrest of the illegal firearm. For instance, was the person arrested inside of a car that was recently carjacked? And whether the person is a suspect in a crime of violence that we're currently investigating but have not yet charged. We also want to know what the firearm can tell us about its history. This is something we call gun intelligence. Our colleagues at ATF, who have been an irreplaceable partner in this effort, can tell us a lot about the history of the illegal firearm, including whether they have evidence that shell casings from that firearm were recovered from another shooting incident, and whether they have evidence about that shooting incident involving a crime of violence. These prior shooting incidents can be everything from someone illegally shooting at a stop sign to a homicide, and the ATF can distinguish those for us. We decided that we would, on a daily basis, take all this information about the person arrested and the firearm recovered and determine whether we could charge each of these cases federally, and if we could charge each of these cases federally, whether we should. Arrested individuals have a constitutional right to be quickly brought before a court. As a practical matter, this typically means that they must be presented in roughly 24 to 48 hours of their arrest. And then we have to make the charging decision well in advance of their initial presentation. Sometimes we can have these detailed conversations in advance of that initial hearing, and sometimes we cannot. Where we have enough evidence to charge someone, but we don't have enough time to complete that conversation, what we will do is charge the person locally in Superior Court, and then within days of that charge, if we decide to charge the person federally, we will dismiss the Superior Court charge and bring charges then in District Court federally. Sometimes we know at the outset that we want to federally charge the case, but we lack sufficient evidence at the time of arrest to bring charges. Think of a situation where one of the agencies represented on the stage today conducts a search warrant. They go into a home, they find 4 people in a room, and in the middle of the room is a firearm. There's nothing linking any one of those individuals to the firearm. There's enough for probable cause to arrest all 4 individuals, but at that point in time, there's not enough evidence to bring charges against them in court. In such a case, our federal partners have agreed to conduct any additional investigation needed, such as forensic testing, to see if we can determine who possessed the firearm that was recovered. And if we develop that evidence, that person will be federally charged. We went live with Project Safe Neighborhood in April of 2022, roughly 2 years ago. And I can share with you some results to date. We've accepted 127 cases for federal prosecution under this effort. Targets of these cases have an average of 6 prior felony arrests. More than half of them were previously arrested for robbery. Roughly 20% of them were previously arrested for homicide. Nearly 40% have a gang or crew affiliation. More than half are suspects in past shootings. And gun intelligence tells us that nearly half of the firearms are connected to prior shooting incidents, including 30% being connected to crime of violence. Make no mistake though, we are not simply sitting back and hoping to catch drivers of gun violence with a gun. This group on this stage has spent a substantial amount of time identifying those driving violence within our community and developing investigations designed to hold them accountable for at least some of their conduct so that they can be removed from our community. What this effort is designed to do is to make sure that when we do happen to arrest a high-value target during an unplanned traffic stop, or law enforcement happens to find a firearm in an individual, they've had it down for weapons because they have reasonable suspicion that the person was carrying a weapon, we know the value of the arrest and maximally prosecute it. It is important to note that while maximal prosecution typically means federal prosecution, that is not always the case. There are mandatory minimums under local district law for those who carry illegal firearms that do not exist under federal law. And particularly when the person has a prior felony conviction for a prior crime of violence, the sentence may actually be harsher than superior. This type of work, unfortunately, takes time. When we begin these types of efforts, we realize that it might take years for us to feel the benefit of them. I want to talk for a moment about where things currently stand with respect to our violent crime landscape. Overall, violent crime is down 22% compared to this point last year. Homicides are down 26%. And shooting incidents, as of the last time the data was reported on April 11th, are down nearly 30%. Law enforcement activities can influence these numbers, but law enforcement activities alone cannot control these numbers. The work we have done between this Project Safe Neighborhood initiative and our other efforts have collectively taken hundreds of drivers of violence out of our community over the last couple of years. Removing this many drivers of violence has an impact on community safety. The work continues and in fact accelerates as we speak. Just as we are feeling today the benefits of investigations that were commenced in 2022 and 2023, we will feel in 2024 and well beyond the benefits of our current investigations. The group assembled in front of you is committed to continue and to accelerate the work of surgically removing the relatively small percentage of individuals who are driving violence in our community from our community. We are incredibly grateful to our law enforcement partners represented on the stage and a host of other law enforcement partners not present with us today for their collaboration on these innovative, data-driven prosecutions. And I, of course, would like to thank our career prosecutors who have worked tirelessly on this Project Safe Neighborhood initiative and many other efforts we have to remove drivers of violence from our community. It is my pleasure to welcome to the podium Special Agent in Charge Craig Kaltenmeyer with the ATF.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Kaltenmeyer, Special Agent in Charge for ATF Washington Field Division. Project Safe Neighborhoods is also referred to as the PSN program. This initiative has been vital to ATF's crime-fighting strategies for a number of years. Many of our colleagues across the country may know it as something that's different. It's been designated as either adopted or exiled cases, but the results are still the same. Today, the Washington Field Division has a team of dedicated special agents, intelligence research specialists, and NPD task force officers assigned to our PSN program. These professionals leverage intelligence, technology, and expertise on a daily basis to identify, detect, and apprehend the most violent offenders in the district. What makes our partnership so effective is that over the last 2 years, we've received unwavering support from the U.S. Attorney's Office. As a result of this support, we've been able to build a robust program that serves to more effectively protect the citizens of the district from violent repeat offenders. I am pleased that, as U.S. Attorney Graves has mentioned, that we've pushed over 127 federal cases across the finish line. Although we've enjoyed a lot of success, let me be clear, we aren't done. We still have some work to do. We will be strengthening our partnerships with MPD, DEA, and FBI by employing even more effective crime gun intelligence to aid our joint efforts. There are still a lot of people out there that think that it's okay to violate federal firearms laws to include possessing machine gun conversion switches and privately manufactured firearms such as ghost guns. I can assure the public that if these individuals choose to continue with gun violence, we will find them and hold them accountable. This should serve as a clear message that we have been laser focused on that task at hand, and we have every intention of making our community safer. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to the DEA Center.
Thank you, Zach Calamai, and good morning, everybody. Drug use and criminal activity are undeniably intertwined. They are directly linked to the adverse effects that they have on our citizens and by generating illicit activities, including firearms-related incidents, robberies, and homicides. One reason for this violence is the competition among criminals and crews for drug markets and customers. Echoing the words of U.S. Attorney Graves and ATF SAC Calamai, DEA works diligently to protect the American public by conducting daily investigations and operations to disrupt and dismantle drug trafficking organizations that pose a threat to our communities and endanger our citizens. A key strategy to halting this violence is the interagency cooperation among our local, state, and federal partners. Since 2022, DEA has been carrying out Operation Overdrive in cities in our area, including here in Washington, D.C. Operation Overdrive is a data-driven approach to combating violent crime and overdose deaths by dismantling the drug trafficking networks causing the most harm. And we have seen the results from these efforts. With our partners, we have seized record amounts of illicit drugs and firearms and prosecuted many violent criminals. Project Safe Neighborhood is another example of our collaborative approach to violent production and in protecting the well-being of Washingtonians and beyond. The efforts outlined today by U.S. Attorney Graves and my colleagues, ranging from data mining and analysis, strategic operations, and ultimately successful prosecutions and convictions, demonstrate that by working together, we are systematically targeting criminals and cleaning the streets plagued with firearms and illicit drugs, such as fentanyl. There's always more that can be done, and we have the power to make a difference. Our primary focus at DEA is to combat the current fentanyl poisoning crisis and the resulting violence in our neighborhoods. This is of utmost importance to me personally, especially since many individuals who lost their lives to fentanyl didn't even realize that they were consuming it. And let me be clear, gun violence and drug-related poisonings, fentanyl poisonings, is violent crime. As a community, we understand the negative impact that drug trafficking organizations and their illegal activities can have on our society. We want to assure you that by working diligently to put an end to these activities and bring those responsible to justice, we are committed to making our community safer and healthier for you all. Thank you, and now I'd like to pass the mic to Assistant Chief Jeff Carroll, MPD.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Carroll, the Executive Assistant Chief at the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, D.C. The Metropolitan Police Department has been working to reduce violent crime across the District of Columbia using a variety of programs and initiatives. Project Safe Neighborhood is one way that we, along with our law enforcement partners, are working to collectively remove illegal firearms off the streets and hold violent offenders accountable for their actions. We are continuing to recover illegal firearms at an alarming rate. As of today, the Metropolitan Police Department has recovered over 930 guns this year alone. That represents a 19% increase compared to this time last year. Every day, our officers go into the community with the goal of making our neighborhood safer and to remove illegal firearms from the streets. The partnership that we have with the agency standing here today is vital to making sure that we can hold offenders accountable. Project Safe Neighborhoods has done just that. It allows us to take gun arrests a step further through collaborative investigation with our federal law enforcement partners and the United States Attorney's Office, allowing federal charges to be filed against these individuals. Currently, as the U.S. Attorney stated, the city is experiencing a 22% decrease in violent crime, and overall crime is down 14%. Project Safe Neighborhoods is just one of the collaborative efforts we're leveraging to continue to work to drive down violent crime with our partner law enforcement agencies, and we look forward to continuing this partnership. I want to thank our partners from the United States Attorney's Office, the ATF, the FBI, the DEA, and those other agencies that are not here today for their continued support, and we look forward to working with them to keep the residents and visitors of the District of Columbia safe. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the U.S. Attorney for any closing remarks.
Are there any on-topic questions? Yes.
Has anything legally changed as a result of the work that you all have done?
I'm sorry.
Any legal changes, any changes in policy process, anything changing aside from the numbers of arrests that we're seeing? Anything else changing from the work that you've all done?
So the process itself was a change, and maybe it would help describe what it looked like before we instituted this process 2 years ago. We have the ability for individuals who have a prior felony conviction to charge them either locally or federally as a violation of both years of law. And everybody was working very hard, but it's kind of the old everybody kind of going in their own direction. So there were people that might have been of interest to us because they were suspect in a homicide investigation, and we would say, let's charge them federally. And we might hear randomly at the time of arrest from one of the law enforcement agents represented on the stage, like this person is very much of interest to us, let's charge this person federally. And we didn't really have a process for getting the consensus on it, and it was ad hoc. So what we said was we should sit down on a daily basis, and for the first time in the district's history, review each of these arrests and make sure that we're bringing the intelligence from all of our organizations together so that we can get the best prosecutorial outcome here. And I think what's happened as a result of that is you've seen both more people charged federally, and based on the statistics I went through, kind of the right people charged federally, right? Between them and their guns, there's strong evidence suggesting that they, or the firearms they used, were connected to crimes of violence. And these are exactly the kinds of people we should be removing from our community. And yes, continue to investigate the crimes of violence for which they're suspects, but if we get them off the street for something, they can't continue this unlawful violence.
Do you, so this is going to be the permanent model moving forward then?
Yes, it's been in place for 2 years. For as long as I am in the position, it's going to be the model. I'm a big believer in it. It's one of the pillars of our approach to proactively going after violent crime.
The issues that the city had with the crime lab, how did that impact the efforts here?
So what I would say is one of the many advantages of our federal partners being involved is that they each have access either their in-house capabilities or their contracts with external experts, the ability to do all the analysis that is done by the crime lab. And one of the many things that our federal partners bring to the table in these investigations is that they can do the testimony. We do not need to go through this thing from that.
So we, in the district, clearly we saw increases in crime, and now, since the beginning of the year, starting to see a decrease. This is after 2 years of this group working. What does that say to how much longer it's going to take for us to really go back to lower crime levels in the city?
So what I said repeatedly throughout the course of last year is the circumstances that led to the spike that we saw were years in the making. They didn't come up overnight, and it is going to take a while to reverse trends. We can look at past instances where we had spikes of violent crime. I was a blind prosecutor in 2007 and 2008 when we had another spike in violent crime. We didn't bottom out from that spike until 2012. And it's not because people aren't taking it seriously or working hard, it's just because it's, just this little effort reflects some of the stuff takes time. Like once you identify people, you have to build investigations, and we're moving with all the speed we can, but it just takes time. But we think success builds on success, and we'll continue to see the benefits of this initiative that started 2 years ago.
Can you talk a little bit more about the firearms, ghost guns versus legal guns that are being traced, and where you're all seeing this coming from?
So I can talk about how we view it as prosecutors and how it factors into our charging decisions, and then I can turn it over to the Special Agent in Charge Conrad to talk about kind of where we're seeing ghost guns for at a higher level. So one of the factors we consider, and I did mention this in my comments, in terms of whether we should prosecute federally or locally, is whether the firearm is a privately manufactured firearm or a ghost gun. Because we've seen, when you look at shooting incidents, a greater percentage of them are from ghost guns than you would expect, just looking at the number of ghost guns recovered versus traditionally manufactured firearms. So that in and of itself is a mark of danger. Another huge mark of danger for us, and something that we give extreme weight to, is the possession and conversion device, which are often called switches, which turn semi-automatic weapons into automatic weapons. Something I will say there, though, that I don't know that everyone appreciates, under federal law, we have to be able to prove that someone knows this device, which often can just be look like a chip on the back of the gun. In fact, is a switch that converts it into a machine gun. So we can do that through our investigations, people's social media, where they make references to it, things that they say, but you have to be able to establish that. We can't do that in all switch cases. One of the things that we push for that is in Secure DC locally is we don't need to show that the person knows that it's a conversion device in order to convict them. So that's another tool we now have for local cases. I can turn it over to Chief's position, especially Chief Charge Galvin, to talk about what he's seeing with ghost guns.
So as far as ghost guns, it's no longer a phenomenon. It's hitting all of major cities across the country. What we see at ATF is probably one of the driving factors is just knowledge. As more information becomes available through social media and other outlets, people start to learn how to create those, and they're testing and trying, and that's why we end up seeing a lot more of those across the country. Same thing with block switches, as you know, the ease of manufacturing one and then placing it on a firearm, particular firearm, and make it a fully automatic firearm. It's just the knowledge and the accessibility that is our biggest problem right now, is trying to not only combat that, but also categorize and look at ways that we can sort of trace back newer means back to the people that are manufacturing them, ghost guns and switches across the country, not just in the district. So it's widespread.
One of the things that's very significant in the data that you guys provided is that the juveniles are 61% of the age of first arrest. Can you talk to me a little bit about, the average age of these kids being 17 years old that you're finding for the first time, and the importance of, I guess, doing intermediary work for juveniles who are coming up into this program, Project Safe Neighborhoods, that you're finding that are 17 years old and younger?
Yeah, so I think if I'm understanding the question in the data, we're looking at when the person was first arrested as opposed to when the person is arrested and federally charged. And there's a trend line there, it's a concerning trend line. By definition, you're talking about multiple felony convictions, multiple attempts for intervention that for whatever reason didn't work, despite the fact that there was a prosecution. It's really concerning to us as we're looking at things. It all fits together from our perspective, right? Like if you look at the median age of a person arrested for armed carjacking, it was, I think, 15 last year in the district, whereas the median age of someone arrested for a shooting was around 29, right? But like when we look at everything and we kind of look at it all together, it is today's carjacker is your shooter tomorrow. And it's kind of like why this is all important. And your question is right on. The system, and this is part of the system that's not handled by us. Once people are caught, once people are prosecuted, the stakes are really high for putting them on a different path, because if you don't put them on a different path, you see the end result. Yes.
You had talked about previously how you spoke with your team and committed to ensuring that you would fight for 16 and 17-year-olds to be prosecuted as adults, especially in the realm of carjacking. If you're talking about the age groups that you are now, 15, for example, turning into sadly a criminal when they're an adult, why does your office not push to prosecute 15-year-olds as adults when that can be done in the city?
So we don't have independent authority to prosecute 15-year-olds as adults. We need the Office of Attorney General to refer us a 15-year-old that they believe should be prosecuted as an adult, whereas with 16 and 17-year-olds, we can just on our own say that we are charging this person as an adult. And during my time in the role, the Office of Attorney General has never asked us to prosecute a 15-year-old as an adult.
Because we hear vice versa, that it's your office that has the authority to say whether you're going to petition a judge to have a 15-year-old prosecuted.
You know, the first step in the process is the Office of Attorney General has to agree to that. All right, thanks.
It's clear from the data here a lot of the serial numbers on these firearms recovered have been obliterated, but for those which haven't, are you seeing any evidence that might lead to what you might call secondary prosecutions of like straw purchases, FFLs not meeting their requirements, things like that?
Yeah, and I'll let Special Agent in Charge comment kind of weigh in on what we see holistically. It's a very good question, and we're always looking for intelligence about where the firearms are coming. I think what we tend to see in the district is guns kind of fall off the legal market well outside of the district, and then they travel through several hands once they get into the district, and even once they're in the district, they tend, and you can see this from the data, the shooting incidents kind of pass from hand to hand in the district. So that is a challenge, but we are always looking for opportunities to go after those individuals that are flooding our community with illegal firearms. We think there's tremendous deterrent value there, and even though those prosecutions can be difficult, we think they're well worth the resources, but there's anything else we'd like to add.
So ATF has the luxury, since we work so closely with NPD, every firearm that comes through, we do trace back what we can. And then we also follow up on whether there are connections to any strong person in trafficking that we can follow up on. Certainly the trend a few years back was probably greater, where we were finding larger numbers of firearms being trafficked back and forth. It's become more difficult, and that's through, in my belief, effective policing. So there are situations where we do find that outside entities outside of the district are trafficking into the city, but we work very diligently along with NPD to identify those people, both in the district and wherever they are in other states, and go after them as well. Just so.
All right, thank you all.